Alright, so if you didn't know, I'm a pretty big fan of Pokemon, so I'm just going to be explaining, in my own thoughts, what legendary Pokemon are, and just giving a quick overview of all the different legendary Pokemon and like the lore associated with them. So, just some things to get out of the way. This is not perfect to the actual lore. Pokemon's lore is kind of convoluted and harder to rationalize. It tends to, what's the word, contradict itself sometimes. And so I'm going to be explaining it in a way that I wish they'd retcon it to, so that it makes more sense. For the most part, it is accurate to current lore, and I'll point out where I'm like, hey, this is kind of what I feel about it. So, yeah. And I might not point out every single piece of source material that a particular legendary Pokemon's design is based on, because I am not aware of all of that, and I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. And so, with that out of the way, what are legendary Pokemon? They're this subset of rare Pokemon that have legends associated with them. They're usually very powerful, and they're generally well known to the general public. That's something that I've noticed. That's not universally true, but that's what I've noticed to be the main difference between a legendary Pokemon and a mythical Pokemon. It seems that the mythical Pokemon are not known to the public to exist, whereas the legendary Pokemon generally are. They're known, they're rare, but they are still known. So first ones we got are the legendary birds of Kanto, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. I'm right off the bat, we're starting with one where I'm kind of like, kind of overlaps with some other legendaries, but I'm pretty sure they represent like the seasons and like water currents and how that plays into the seasons, things like that. And they're linked to another legendary Pokemon, Lugia. But at the end of the day, they're really just these cool birds. I don't think that they have as deep of lore as some of the other legendaries. We also have Mewtwo from the Kanto region, and it's this genetic clone of, well, not a clone, basically a science experiment where they took DNA from, they were trying to replicate this mythical Pokemon called Mew. And Mew is supposed to have the DNA of every single Pokemon within its own DNA code. So they wanted to do their best to clone it and then also weaponize it. So Mewtwo kind of represents this ethical consequence of scientific advancement and weaponization without any limit to it. So they made it super powerful, and it's powerful enough that it broke out of its containment and has super powerful psychic abilities, has access to a ton of different moves because Mew, since it has the DNA of all Pokemon, it can use almost all Pokemon moves, and so Mewtwo also learns a lot of Pokemon moves. It also gets these two Mega forms. Mega Evolution is this phenomena that a small subset of Pokemon can do, and Mewtwo is one of them. So you have Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Mewtwo Y. You also have the legendary beasts. These are Raikou, this yellow one, Entei, this redder one, and Suicune, the blue one. They are from the Johto region, and the lore behind them is they used to be just normal Pokemon, but they perished in this tower incident, and they were resurrected by this other legendary Pokemon called Ho-Oh into these legendary beasts. So they kind of represent natural disasters because in this tower incident, the tower got destroyed because of lightning, because of flooding, and because of fire, and that's what killed them. So when they're resurrected, they kind of represent those natural disasters. And leading off of that, we have the tower duo, Lugia and Ho-Oh. This is Lugia and this is Ho-Oh. So Ho-Oh resurrected the legendary beasts. They're from the Johto region, and this is another one that's kind of hard to pin down what they thematically represent, but in my opinion, they represent harmony and redemption. Redemption, especially for Ho-Oh, because it resurrects the legendary beast and also has these feathers that can stop someone from aging and things like that. We have the legendary giants. Those include Regirock, Regice, whichever you want, Registeel, Regieleki, and Regidrago. They're from the Hoenn region and the Galar region. So the first three are from the Hoenn region, and the last two live in the Galar region. And they just represent legendary elemental golems. So rock, ice, steel, dragon, and electric. They're just cool, powerful giants. We have what's called the Eon duo of Latios and Latias. So Latios, Latias. They're from the Hoenn region. I don't really know what they thematically represent. There's kind of cool jets, I guess. They're very empathetic, so I guess there's that as well. And they also have megaforms. Their megaforms look almost identical to each other, except for their eyes. So this is Mega Latias, this is Mega Latios. We have the Weather Trio, probably one of the favorites of Kyogre, which is this one, Groudon, which is the mole, and Rayquaza, which is this one. They are the main legendaries of the Hoenn region. They represent the land, the sea, and the skies. Super powerful legendaries. They, especially Kyogre and Groudon, they typically fight with one another, the land and sea kind of clashing, and then Rayquaza has to come in and stop them both. And Rayquaza also is kind of the protector of the atmosphere, so protecting against asteroids and things like that. And they have what are called primal reversions, and then Rayquaza has a mega form. So this is Primal Kyogre, this is Primal Groudon, and this is Mega Rayquaza. So these are just more powerful versions of the existing legendaries. We have the Lake Trio of Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf. They reside in the Sinnoh region, and they represent the human psyche. So I don't remember which one corresponds to which, but they represent intelligence, emotion, and then like resolve. So yeah, they represent different parts of the human psyche. And they can also, if you get all three of them, they can create, or not create, but there's this item called the Red Chain that they have access to that can kind of force any Pokemon to do what a human says, which is very interesting. Kind of a commentary on how humanity likes to control things in nature. We have the Creation Trio of Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina. They reside in the Sinnoh region also. They represent space, time, and like antimatter distortion. And they also have origin forms. So here are their origin forms. These origin forms are closer in look to the suspected creator of the Pokemon world called Arceus, which is another Pokemon. It's a mythical Pokemon, not a legendary, but these three legendaries stem from Arceus, and these forms are meant to look a lot like it, which is very interesting because Arceus does not like Giratina. And based on Pokemon Legends Arceus, I think that Arceus like tried to make the universe, right? And expected there to be time and space, and did not expect this distortion in antimatter. So it doesn't really like Giratina, and Giratina is kind of cast out, which is very interesting. It's interesting because in Legends Arceus, for instance, Arceus has a move called Judgment, and it's just a super powerful move. It's Arceus, I guess, judging its opponent Pokemon. And in the final battle, it's very subtle, but Arceus would use Judgment on any Pokemon except for Giratina. If you use Giratina, it won't use Judgment against you. And that makes the battle very easy. So if y'all are having trouble with that battle, that's how you can beat it. But it's just interesting lore-wise that this is kind of the Pokemon that that Arceus did not plan to have exist. We have Heatran, also from the Sinnoh region. I guess represents heat and magma. It's kind of just a random thing. It's kind of like just a powerful toad that comes from the magma. I don't know, kind of like the legendary birds. I kind of suspect that this is just a powerful, normal Pokemon. And it also has a Mega form nowadays, so this is Mega Heatran over here. We have Regigigas, comes from the Sinnoh region as well. Represents like a Titan from mythology, I think. Lore-wise, it created the legendary giants that we spoke of earlier, and it also is super powerful. It's slow. It has this ability called Slow Start, so it's very slow to get going. But once it's all warmed up, it is super strong in terms of just raw strength. It's said to have enough strength to like push continents into place. We have Cresselia, also from the Sinnoh region, represents pleasant dreams. It has a mythical counterpart called Darkrai, which kind of represents nightmares and bad dreams. So Cresselia is a very, very sweet Pokemon, psychic type. We have the Swords of Justice, which are Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. There's also Keldeo, which is included in the Swords of Justice, but Keldeo is a mythical Pokemon. It's not a legendary. It's not known to exist by the general public. These three are from the Unova region, and they represent chivalry and justice. The forces of nature. These are another one that kind of overlap with stuff and kind of hard to pin down, but they consist of Tornadus, Thundurus, Landorus, and Enamorus. They come from the Unova region, these three do, and then also the Hisui region for Enamorus. They represent... it's hard to pin down what they represent. To me, this is what I think they represent. I think they represent wishes of bountiful harvest, because in at least the show, they're tied to how well the land performs crop-wise, and they're genies as well. So they're flying genies. They kind of represent storms. They got to have this cloud thing here, and yeah, they're genies. So I think people are wishing for these bountiful harvests, and then they kind of come through and help with that. Enamorus, I kind of don't know. It's very weird, very weird. They also have these Therian forms. So we got Tornadus, Thundurus, Enamorus, and Landorus in these more animalistic forms. We have the Tao trio of Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem. They reside in the Unova region. They're the main legendaries from that region, and they represent morality, with Reshiram representing truth. Yeah, Reshiram representing truth, Zekrom representing ideals, and Kyurem kind of, in my opinion, representing amorality, just like a lack of either, just kind of acting on instinct on and doing whatever you need to do in your best interests. And what's interesting about these three is they're said to, in the past, have been one Pokemon. At least Reshiram and Zekrom have been said to be. I think Kyurem is included with that, but there's also folklore with Kyurem that it could have came from space. So very, very interesting stuff. And going along with that, they have fusion forms where Kyurem can splice its DNA with one of these Pokemon at a time. So we have white Kyurem when it mixes with Reshiram, and we have black Kyurem when it mixes with Zekrom. We have the Aura trio next of Xerneas, kind of looks like an X, Yveltal, kind of looks like a Y, and then Zygarde, which sort of looks like a Z, I guess. They reside in the Kalos region. They're the main legendaries and the only legendaries from that region. They represent life, death, and the maintenance of order. And Zygarde in particular, well, first let me start with Xerneas and Yveltal. Their energies were used in this doomsday device called the Ultimate Weapon, like 2,000 years ago or something like that. And this weapon was like a nuke. Like it literally just ended this huge war. But also, as a result of that, it created the Mega Stones, which allow some Pokemon to Mega Evolve, like we talked about earlier. Zygarde is meant to keep these two in check, but more than that, I think it keeps everything in check. It's supposed to represent order in the ecosystem, and what's interesting about it is it seems to scale itself to whatever conflict it's put up against. Like it scales its own power to whatever it needs to maintain order, which is really, really interesting. And I'll explain that more by showing you all of Zygarde's forms. So Zygarde, in its core form, starts out like this. So this is Zygarde. These are what are called Zygarde cores. And there are all these Zygarde cells that are just strewn about the Kalos region. And it can summon the cells to itself to create different forms for itself. So by using 10% of its available cells, it can become this dog thing. This is its 10% form. If it uses half of the cells available to it, it can become this 50% form. And if it uses all of the cells available to it, it can become this 100% form. So you can kind of see that it'll use as many cells as it needs to just beat whatever it's fighting. It'll literally scale its strength to whatever it's fighting. And even more than that, if this 100% form is not enough, it'll scale itself further. Inside of Legends ZA, it couldn't beat whatever it's fighting in its 100% form, so it just decides to get a Mega form. It just decides, hey, yeah, I'm gonna Mega Evolve now to defeat what I need to defeat. It's never had a Mega Evolution before. The stone has never existed before, but it's like, hey, I need more power. I'm a Mega Evolve now. Back since it's been introduced, almost every generation, it gets a new signature move. It just gets more and more moves. It starts out with this move, which is like a strong Earthquake, which is pretty cool. Earthquakes and ground moves can't hit flying types, so you know what it decides? Hey, I'm gonna get a move where even if it's a ground move, I'm gonna just hit the flying types now. Because hey, if I need to go against a flying type, I'm gonna just scale my move so that I can beat the flying type. It gets another signature move beyond that, and then in Generation 7, it's like, hey, all these other Pokemon have signature Z moves. I guess to keep up, I need to have a signature Z move as well. So it just decides, hey, I want a signature Z move. It gets a signature Z move. This thing will get whatever it needs to beat the other Pokemon around it and maintain order. So it's really, really cool and interesting for that reason. We have the Island Guardians. They hail from the Alola region. So that's Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, Tapu Bulu, and Tapu Fini. And they represent like guardian spirits. Each one guards a different Alolan island. So they're pretty cool for that reason. There's not a ton of lore besides that. They fight off these they're sort of Pokemon, but these things from alternate realities called Ultra Beasts. They defend the island from them. This is the Light Trio: Solgaleo, Lunala, and Necrozma. And technically, there's two other Pokemon that kind of go with this, and they're called Cosmog and Cosmoem. Solgaleo and Lunala actually evolved from Cosmog and Cosmoem. These were the first two legendaries to actually evolve, which is interesting because these three also have access to those alternate dimensions that we talked about in the last slide. So it's highly implied that these three did not come from our dimension. They're from the unknown. So I kind of think that they represent the cosmic unknown. If you want to be more literal, Solgaleo represents the sun, Lunala represents the moon, and Necrozma represents light. But I think they represent more so the cosmic unknown because they're definitely not from our universe. And Necrozma also has a fusion form and an ultra form. So this is not Necrozma's natural form, but the Z crystals that the Pokemon users use to unleash these super powerful moves, they are actually pieces that have shattered off of Necrozma's body and have some of Necrozma's light in them. So Necrozma actually has to siphon light off of Solgaleo or Lunala to not be in pain, and then once it also has enough of its own energy back, it can become its true form, which is what's called Ultra Necrozma. So you see, it's just exuding light, and this is the light that is used whenever someone uses a Z move. We also have the legendary heroes, Zacian and Zamazenta. There's a third Pokemon that some people include with this trio. I don't, or include here as a trio. I don't think it applies. But anyway, these two are from the Galar region. They represent knights. So we got a knight with a sword, knight with a shield, and they have battle worn and armored forms. So we have Zacian's armored form, Zamazenta's armored form, and we have them after a bunch of battles kind of retired. This is that other legendary from the Galar region that kind of in the lore fights against these. This one is said to come from space. It's called Eternatus, and when it unleashed its power in the Galar region years ago, it was what's called the Darkest Day event. So it had this form, which is called its Eternamax form. This is its normal form, and this is its Eternamax form, and it was just really bad for the region, and the legendary heroes were able to stop it. But anyway, I think it represents the concept of infinity. It's hard to pin down what this thing represents, but I think that's what it represents to me. Its name is Eternatus, like eternal, kind of sounds like infinite, and its power is it can scale its own and other Pokemon's size to be like absurdly huge. So yeah, I think it represents infinity, and how that concept doesn't really make so much sense in reality. That's why it looks so strange, and why the properties of the Dynamax Pokemon, which are the Pokemon that have been scaled to be huge, they just don't make sense to all the researchers and things like that. That's my take on it. We have another legendary inside of the Galar region called Urshifu. I think it just represents martial arts. There's not a whole lot lore-wise with it. It actually does evolve. It starts out as what's called Cubfu, and it can evolve into Urshifu, but there are two types. There's the single strike style form and the rapid strike style form, and these two forms also have Gigantamax forms. So this is where, using powers from Eternatus, it can scale itself up. So these are huge versions of the single strike form and the rapid strike form. Also in Galar, we have the legendary birds of the Galar region. So this is also Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, but they're more warrior-oriented. And I think that they represent, instead of seasons of like the year, I think they represent seasons of conflict. So to me, Articuno represents callousness. Zapdos represents fighting, and then Moltres represents more malice and evil intent. Then we have the Crown Tundra trio of Glastrier, Spectrier, and Calyrex, also from the Galar region. They represent a monarch and their steeds. So back in the day, long ago, Calyrex was the king of the Galar region, but over time, the people kind of forgot about it, and so it kind of lost its power because no one believed in it anymore. And then these are Glastrier and Spectrier, which are the horses that it rides. And Calyrex can ride the horses. Technically, when it rides the horse, it's a new form, but visually, the form is just Calyrex on the horse, so I'm not including it here. Moving to the Paldea region, we have the four Vessels of Ruin, Wochen, Qianpao, Tinglu, and Shiyu. They represent corruption and revenge, so each one of them was born from like an artifact from a corrupt king who unjustly, I'm pretty sure, killed people over these items. So these stone tablets, this sword, this like basin thing, and then these beads. Maybe these aren't called the Vessels of Ruin. They're something of Ruin, but Treasures of Ruin, I think. Treasures of Ruin. These Pokemon were born from these things, and they represent the corruption of the king, and then the revenge that people have against being unjustly treated for that. Okay, I don't know what these are officially called, and this is probably my most far out on a limb lore or thematic representation yet. I'm calling these the Optimization Duo, and those include Koraidon and Miraidon. They come from the Paldea region. They're the strongest legendaries in the region, and I think they represent... So, here, I'll give you what Pokemon actually says they represent. They represent the past and future, which becomes very obvious because they are, like, super technologically advanced and, like, a super ancient form of this bicycle Pokemon called Cyclizar. But past and future, that's such a weird thing to me because there's already a Pokemon that controls time, Dialga. So it feels weird that you'd have past and future be a thing when there's already a Pokemon that has dominion over time. So I don't know, that's strange to me. That doesn't rationalize well in my head. So to me, they more represent conservatism and progressivism, not in the political sense. So don't even go there. What I mean is like when we want to make something better or innovate in some way, do we look to what people have already done and kind of fall back on that, or do we try and optimize by looking at the possibilities of the future? Do we fall back on the safety of the past or the possibilities of the future? That's what I think they represent. In the game, the professor, right, has this time travel machine and it brings Pokemon from the past and future here, and that's where these two Pokemon came from. That doesn't make sense to me, and I think my lore is better. So what I think makes more sense is the machine analyzes the DNA of whatever Pokemon is input to it, and based on that, it can kind of extrapolate what features, what ancient features would have made this Pokemon the best ever, or what future innovations could make this Pokemon the best ever. But I don't think these Pokemon actually existed in the past or will exist in the future. It doesn't make sense that, oh, yep, go ahead 1,000 years and every Pokemon's just going to be a robot. That doesn't make sense to me. It seems like an optimization that would never naturally occur and never will occur, but is possible if you somehow found every possible innovation you can in a Pokemon. And same with the ancient forms. I don't think these existed back in time, but if you found every feature you could and applied it to the Pokemon to make it the best ever, I think this is what you would have gotten. So I don't think it makes sense for it to actually be a time travel machine. I think it's an optimization machine. It just depends on if you're looking to future possibilities or past features that other things have had. If that makes sense. And also, we have the ancient legendary beasts. These, I don't know if they're technically considered to be legendary Pokemon, but they're derivatives of legendary Pokemon, so I think that makes them legendary too. They come from the Paldea region. They're called Walking Wake, Gouging Fire, and Raging Bolt. And these things came from that same machine that Koraidon and Miraidon did. So I think, again, I don't think Suicune in the past ever looked like this, or Raikou, or Entei. I don't think they would have been dinosaurs in the past. That makes no sense to me, especially as this trio actually cements my idea in my mind as opposed to the Pokemon lore. Because in lore, I said that Suicune, Entei, and Raikou were normal Pokemon that died in this tower and were resurrected. So they never existed long in the past. They never existed in prehistoric times. So I think the machine would have gotten their DNA somehow and then was like, okay, if I can take every feature of ancient Pokemon and apply it to these Pokemon to make them the best they could ever be in ancient times, how would they look? And then this is how they look. I don't think these would naturally occur. It never feels like that tiger thing would somehow become a Brachiosaurus in the past. I think this is a man-made splicing of DNA, which I think is really cool. And I think it's better lore than the past and future time travel thing. Same with the Swords of Justice. It doesn't make sense to me for them to just decide, okay, yeah, in the future I'm just going to become an android, especially when only one of these exists in the Pokemon world, one of each of these. So anyway, with the android Swords of Justice, we have Iron Leaves, Iron Boulder, and Iron Crown, and they also come from the Paldea region again. We also have the Loyal Three of Okidogi, Monkey Dory, and Pheasantipity. They come from the Paldea region, but more specifically, they come from, what's it called? I forgot what the place is called, but they come from like this more specific island. Kitakami, that's where they come from. But that's a subset of the Paldea region. And these three represent greed. That you see that they have this purple chain, this poison chain attached to them. And that comes from this like poison peach mythical Pokemon called Pecharunt. And Pecharunt represents greed. And these three are also chained down by that same greed. And it's a poison to them. So yeah. Then it should also be noted that these Loyal Three come to conflict with this Pokemon, which is called Ogerpon. It resides in the Paldea region, also in Kitakami, and it represents an ogre or an imp, I'm pretty sure, and it has a form for each of its masks. So this is its teal mask, this is its hearthflame mask, this is its water wellspring mask, and this is its cornerstone mask, and it changes type based on that. But it's this really powerful ogre Pokemon, and the Loyal Three actually end up killing its trainer back in the day, and try and steal its mask in the process, and so you have to help it get it back and defeat the Loyal Three. Then we have Terrapagos, which also comes from the Paldea region, and it represents Pokemon typing. So you can see all the different Pokemon types are on its shell, and it has three forms. It has this weird baby form. I can't stand this form. This form, it's not like it evolves. It just it just has this form for no reason. It has this form, then it can become its normal form the second it gets into a battle. And then if it terrestrializes, which for most Pokemon allows it to change its type, but for this Pokemon, since it's the source of it, it has this new form of this big turtle thing, and it gets this new type called the Stellar type. But yeah, those are all the legendary Pokemon. I know I was kind of just talking around, so let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Let me know if you disagree in the comments. Pokemon lore, very obscure for the most part, so I'm sure a lot of people will be like, well, in this entry, in this specific thing, it actually says this, and yeah, y'all are probably right. So let me know in the comments. I try my best to read all of them. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe, like the video. I really appreciate it, and thank y'all for watching.